Well, good afternoon, good morning, or good evening, depending upon where you are in the world, and welcome to today's DevOps.com webinar. I'm Charlene O'Hanlon, moderator for today's event, and I welcome you. As always, we have a great event on tap, but before we get started, we do have a few housekeeping items we need to go over. First of all, today's event is being recorded, so if you miss any or all of the event, you'll have the opportunity to access it later on. Following today's webinar, we will be sending out an email that contains a link to access the webinar on demand. And we are taking questions from the audience. So if at any time during today's presentation you have a question for our speaker, please don't wait, don't hesitate. Just use your GoToWebinar control panel and submit your questions, and we'll try to get to as many as we can near the end of today's webinar. Also happening at the end of today's webinar, we will be doing a drawing for 4 $25 Amazon gift cards. So please stick around. Hopefully you'll be one of our 4 lucky winners. All right, with that, let's go ahead and kick off today's webinar, which is Accelerate Delivery by Understanding DevOps Feedback Loops and Value Stream Management. Our speaker today is Lance Knight, who is the COO at ConnectAll. Lance, thank you so much for joining me today. So excited to have you here.
Well, thank you, and I appreciate DevOps.com for hosting us for this great webinar.
Great. Well, I'm going to take myself off camera, put myself on mute, and let you get right into your presentation.
Well, great. Thanks, everybody. And so, I kind of want to go through feedback loops and things like that. But one of the things I wanted to start off by saying right away is, did you know that actually feedback loops can disrupt your flow in software delivery? They actually can slow you down. And by not understanding them and mapping them, they can impede your velocity. But on the other hand, if you do understand them and you implement them, they can improve velocity as well. So when thinking about feedback loops, you have to make some key decisions. Do I want to implement a feedback loop? Do I want to remove a feedback loop? Or do I want to throttle a loop or amplify a loop? But you have to analyze feedback loops first and have an understanding of the different types of what they are. So what I did is I went out and I started to prepare for this webinar, and I Googled feedback loops. And I'll be frank, when I started doing that, I got confused. Now, I've been talking about feedback loops for a long time. But when I tried to get some more information for this presentation, I got things like homeostasis maintained and all these different types of feedback loops that can apply. And I kind of scratched my head of thinking, so, I just was more confused about it. And there was all these different types of feedback loops as well. There are positive feedback loops, negative feedback loops. There are balancing loops, reinforcement loops. So I was trying to put together a presentation there I could, kind of jump right in and talk about feedback loops. But I came to the realization that this is actually a pretty confusing topic when you look at feedback loops in general. So what I did is I went and said, let's make this a little more simpler. Let me walk through some things that are relevant to feedback loops around systems thinking and describe some of the practices in system thinking that'll allow you to categorize feedback loops in software delivery. So what is systems thinking? So, simply put, it's this thought of thinking about interconnectivity. There's synergy within that, but systems thinking is looking at things as a system altogether, and they interact through feedback and produce something out the other side. So you're thinking about all of the things, a bigger picture of how everything works together to achieve a goal or to produce a product or release code into production. And in software delivery, of course, we want to look at things from this whole system perspective. But what is a system? So simply put, a system is a set of parts that come together as a whole to produce a result. That's a typical system, right? And so we're still, even with those descriptions, we're still a little fuzzy. So I have this simple system that I've talked about for years, and I'll walk you through that so you have kind of an understanding about how these systems work. So this is a dryer, closed dryer. This is an example of a whole system, and it's got its different parts inside of it. as well. But if you were thinking about it only from what it can do, a black box perspective, put wet clothes in, cold air and electricity goes into the dryer, goes through synergy and phase transition, and emerges dry clothes. And that's cycle time that flows between. But that's a black box, but there's more to it, right? A system is a sum of parts that come together as a whole to produce an output. So inside a dryer, there is the basic elements or the basic parts, which is the heater, the drum, the electric motor, and all of these work together to get that desired outcome of the dry clothes, right? Pretty straightforward. This is a system. And synergy is how those different parts work together. So the motor, electric motor, turns the fan, it turns the drum. They interconnect. There can be bottlenecks and constraints in there. Pretty straightforward. And there's feedback loops that happen here as well. And there are a couple different feedback loops, right? So when I did investigated feedback loops, inside the dryer, there are positive loops, negative loops, direct loops, indirect loops, informal loops, balancing and reinforcing loops. And all of those are in there. And some of these are the same, just categorized for different types of industries. So today I'm going to talk about positive and negative feedback loops and how they interact in here. And we'll talk about that, how it works within our value stream together. So what is a negative feedback loop? So a negative feedback loop is a feedback that happens that lets a system maintain homeostasis or to continue working. So in this example, I've used a temperature sensor works on the dryer, and that turns off the heater when it's too hot to maintain the right temperature inside the dryer to dry your clothes and not overheat them or burn them or so on and dry them in the right amount of time. So those are negative feedback loops. To me, they seem a little opposite, but that's the way they say the feedback loops are for negative loops. So a positive loop, on the other hand, is something that takes you out of homeostasis, something that's taking you away from that. So in this example, I'm using the lint filter. If the lint filter gets clogged up, the dryer doesn't work at the right capacity, it takes longer, it's not maintaining that peak performance. So these are feedback loops that are happening in your system. And you also may want to map the system. So this is an example of a system map, not the same as a value stream map, but it's here to design to kind of show you how everything interrelates, and you can start putting those loops in there and marking them by positive and negative. And these can get rather complicated as well. When I do these, I use a mind mapping tool, pretty straightforward mind mapping tool. I use Mind Node, and it lets me map everything out in a system and bring it together. So I'm looking at software delivery systems. I usually do a mind map and then try to merge the mind map together with a value stream map. So hopefully those few slides demystified that a little bit for you on what loops are. I mean, I really did come up with all kinds of things about feedback loops and different types of systems. And we're talking about software delivery. So hopefully I can put it into that kind of understanding for software. Now, when you're using and understanding feedback loops and you're analyzing software delivery, you need to do that with intent. If you do it with intent to improve the flow of information or a flow of code to production or the flow of the assets in your value stream, you can then use it to remove waste, to improve cycle times, and so on. A couple things though, feedback loops aren't alerts on a dashboard. And of course, they are all over the place in software delivery. And as I said earlier, you got to look at them from three kind of mindsets. Do I need to create one? Do I need to remove one? How can I amplify or automate one? And if you don't look at them when you're managing and looking at your software value stream, you may not achieve the goals of trying to remove waste at that time. So this is a value stream map, and the industry is going toward value stream maps. ConnectAll, we're a value stream management company, and we do value stream mapping for our clients. And this is a simple value stream map. And I've said in other presentations that this simple value stream map doesn't really tell enough of the story. It's pretty linear in its approach, and I think we needed to take a better look at that. So if you look at value stream mapping in manufacturing, you can see that we have production control. And this is a very simple traditional value stream map from manufacturing from a place I worked years ago. So you look at your suppliers, got the materials, they're waiting, and it moves through. You got production control taking care of all of that flow. And my understanding and what I realized is that in the value stream maps we've been doing, we're not mapping the information flow. We're mapping the material flow, and that kind of shows the material flow as you look at the simple maps that we've been putting together. So to really get into understand feedback loops and to improve flow in your software delivery organization, you do need to map the information flow as well. So I put together a simple example of that. This is a value stream map. It shows your flow of work at the request or the portfolio level, the development flow, and of course the operational flow. These are all interconnected, but I've mapped the information flow at the top, just like when you do production control in manufacturing, you map that out as well. So you can see I have an epic in there, and that needs to flow to the next stage. So if I move that along, you actually see that epic moved to approval. So we're moving that through its flow, and we're knowing how much time it takes to go through there because we've mapped it out. We get into the design phase. Here's where we start, moving work breakdown across the rest of the organization. And these are connected, and there's feedback loops between these. So this sits in the backlog of the system, and it's waiting to be prioritized, planned, and put into production and coded. Now, the other point here is to know that this is not two-dimensional. This is multi-dimensional, three-dimensional. You may have multiple portfolio teams feeding into multiple development teams. You need to look at all of those as well and the feedback loops between those to really manage your value stream. In past presentations, I've said you should have a value stream manager or value stream leader who looks at all of this and has the ability to kind of find areas of waste and work toward removing those. So anyway, continuing on my story here, of course, you're breaking down that epic into multiple user stories. Your organization may do epic featured user stories. You may just have tasks. This is just a sample of this kind of moving through. So now I've got a bunch of user stories. I'm going to move those to the planned phase. You see that those move to the planned phase. Now, what happened at the portfolio level or the request level, that epic story moved to development right away when it got into the planned phase. Now, that could be an automatic feedback loop that makes that happen, right? So when that one user story work moves to plan, automatically it moves the epic story to development. So these are the kind of things you look for in feedback loops. And I'll talk more as we're going along about that. So moving along further, it's in progress. Let's say they're in a sprint or they're working on that. They're now working on those two pieces of code in order to produce that change or implement that epic story. And I call that the material flow. It is your DevOps flow or your DevOps pipeline. That's actually there where all of this is interactive and connected. And these are really kind of connections and feedback loops. It does some really cool stuff when these things start to get connected and you understand these loops. For example, traceability becomes a report because I can look all the way down, up and down my value stream, look at all the connections, and manage different types of feedback loops as well. So continuing the story, of course, I start to go further. It goes from build to test. There are some automatic feedback loops that can happen in tests. So if a defect is discovered, that can go and connect itself right to the right user story and then move it back into progress if that happens. That's a way of improving flow as well, because what can happen there is you can get all the way and you're trying to hit a release window and you get a test fail. You'll have knowledge of that in the feedback loop because it's happened automatically. The developer can fix that, resubmit the code, and it goes right back through that process, and then you can hit a release window if you're using those. So this feedback loop happens through the whole value stream, and there's ways of automating automating it, looking at it, and so on. So continuing down the story, you can see now I've got all 3 of those user stories complete in my development pipeline or development flow. And that's related to the epic that's moving along as well. So, and one's in test. So once that's finished test, we're in release, go ahead to the next phase, everything's deployed. You can see that automatically, because of feedback and connection, it automatically moved that epic story to done, and moved all the user stories to done, and it's sitting here in deploy. And there's other phases as well. So now when I move into operations, where I'm having monitoring and I have customers looking at it and they're using it, feedback comes back in the way of defects through operations, customer enhancements through operations, and so on. And that's also got a pretty loud feedback loop, and you may want to amplify that as well. So this whole flow kind of demonstrates how connecting things through your value stream and looking at feedback loops is relevant. So when you're looking at it and you want to now put some analysis on your value stream, you want to do that with the intent of improving flow. And there's feedback through the whole system. There is feedback from your product manager to your product owner to your portfolio person. There's feedback from the testers to the product owner, all of this human feedback that's happening as well. And you don't necessarily have to map that, but it's good to understand it. So, one of the things I say that is, if I'm at portfolio level working in Jama, but my developers are working in Jira, I have to be able to communicate. If that feedback is happening through emails and so on, I may be able to automate that by having an integration between those two. I can orchestrate some of this feedback as well as moving things along based upon all the connections that are happening within the value stream. And most organizations have a myriad of tools, and those tools have to align to how you're moving things through your value stream from a process and systems perspective. So I call this orchestrating the value stream with feedback loops. So I can really make sure that things are flowing in the right way, I have the right feedback, all the assets are connected in the right way, and look to remove waste after I've mapped all that out. Now, just to wrap this up, again, this is really important, and that, you want to look at your value stream with the thoughts of improving flow. Do I need to implement a feedback loop, or do I need to remove a feedback loop? One of the feedback loops we recently got asked to put together was defect or code in production issues into Slack, so that it gives you a feedback over there. It's an actionable feedback that you can implement, or feedback into pipelines and into backlogs as well. And do it from the thought process of removing waste. I think that's really key as you're looking at amplifying feedback loops and so on. Why is this important now? I think that it's really important if you want to be predictable, you want to get an early ROI, lower cost, and so on. But there's even more to that. As most companies are heading into a digital transformation, they need to be able to produce software quicker. The software is the servicing, the support services for most products out there today. So most companies don't make software, but they have a lot of software to support those products. If you go to a large financial institution and you ask them what their products are, they're going to say deposits, loans, and so on, but they have lots of great software to support that as well. So, and everybody wants a no-touch company, self-serve digital experience these days because of the nature of the economy and what's going on today in the world. So it's really important today to do that. I talked a little bit today about what a value stream leader is. And a value stream leader is somebody who's going to understand these principles, be able to look at how to map the value stream, automate the value stream, connect the tools, look at the people and the processes to make sure that you're delivering a quality code with the right level of velocity. You're either accelerating or throttling back your value stream based upon demand, need, and so on. Some of the things I like to say, if I can do a release every minute, it doesn't matter if I don't have anything to release. So a value stream manager or value stream leader would look at that. I do work for ConnectAll, so we'll take 1 second to tell you about ConnectAll. We're a value stream management company. We provide value stream optimization services and a full value stream management suite. So, is there any questions?
All right, let's see. We have plenty of time for questions, guys. So please go ahead and use your GoToWebinar control panel if you do have one. Why don't we go ahead and dive into what we have here. First question, let's see. So what do I do from here? It seems a little open-ended. How do I learn more about systems thinking and aligning that to value stream management?
So that's an interesting question because, you know, like I said earlier, I went out and did a search on that, and I got more confused, even though I knew kind of what they were for this. You know, I've talked about feedback loops for years. So I would recommend that you, there's a couple good books out there. You can get a value stream management assessment from from us and some of our competitors if you wanted to do that. And really just start to dive in and understand lean principles in systems thinking. So there's some great lean books out there. And I don't know if I said this earlier, but I firmly believe in order to improve your value stream, you need to understand and use systems thinking and lean principles to really get the best results together. So there are some good books about using systems thinking and lean, and there's some great, of course, YouTube videos as well on those topics. But it does get somewhat confusing based upon the words that I've uncovered when you talk about systems thinking.
Yeah, okay, all right. So here's a good one. What about net promoter scores? Do you believe that this is an effective means to getting feedback directly from customers about a product? I mean, that seems pretty explanatory. You know, we've been hearing about the net promoter scores for a couple of years now, but you know, where do you think that stands?
Yes, I kind of put that in that whole operation bucket we talked about earlier, where I'm asking for feedback and that's coming back in. So it's absolutely a great way to get feedback. Will that improve flow? Not as much, but it's good to know so that you improve quality and you're giving your customers what they want. So absolutely bringing net promoter score back into your value stream and using that to prioritize the things that you're doing will actually help you improve flow, I guess, as well. So absolutely, that's a good method to make sure you're building the right things. And it's really important to know that. That's why today, ConnectAll, we announced our support for OKR tools and driving business outcomes down to code and production at the same time. So
cool.
Long-winded answer, but
cool,
I think.
No, that's all right. We like the long-winded answers. All right, here's just a quick reminder. If you have a question for Lance, go ahead and use your GoToWebinar control panel and submit it. Here's one for you. Any advice easy for me to say, any advice for startups? One, maybe the only advantage of being a startup is reacting and executing in quick fashion. So what is the right approach for just enough use of the techniques and thinking you've laid out here?
So startups are interesting with that. So I would say that design your value stream in your business with an intent that you're going to grow. So understand all the pieces of the system. And I've worked at a lot of startups and I've built them up in different ways. And there's no, from a systems thinking perspective, there's no one piece that you can do. You can't put the whole system in at once. So you have to pick the parts of the system that's going to grow your startup more appropriately. And design, if it's a software startup, then design your delivery in the right way, but don't implement things that are going to impede your rapid development at the same time. Sometimes I call it I actually do call it, I call it the power of do. And if you're in a startup, you got to really embrace the power of do. Get up and code something. If it's wrong, your customers will approve that. Your customers will let you know, but you got to go on intuition. So you can't put the whole system in at once. And and a startup sometimes don't worry so much about those formalities, but have intent of the future.
All right, all right. Does that change as startups become non-startups and they become more established?
It does, yeah, because you get more formal approaches, right? You get a formal product management team, a formal product owner, right? You get a head of products. The point I'm getting at is at the beginning, you have to just do, but
Right.
if you're a leader of a startup, have an eye on where it is you're going to have to be with the systems you have and the flow of work in a year or two, so that you're delivering at the right pace. Because one of the advantages of a startup, and companies lose that advantage over time, is be able to do rapid pivots and rapid change, right? So you got to be aware of where you want to be so that you still maybe can do those rapid pivots and changes rapidly like you could in a startup. So it's knowing where you're going from a business perspective, right? Having an outcome in mind there as well.
All right, cool. Excellent. So we've gotten some really great questions, and I'm really excited to see a lot of these here. What's your view on the right metrics for the right activity and how they tie to the overall OKRs? How does your approach support that?
So that's interesting. I think the value stream management space is spending a lot of time talking about the lean metrics. And I think those are all really relevant metrics, right? And people don't know, but my background is manufacturing from upstate New York. I worked in a turbine engine component company. So, but I think you have to use metrics that matter to the business. So not all the time does the flow metric work as well. I think they're really important. I think you need to capture them and you need to look at them, right? But there's other metrics like how much of my OKR, say my objective, is being completed, and what do I need to do to accomplish that objective, federate that down through your value stream so I can then get to the point of, am I capturing the right metrics against my objective or goal? Too often those things work in a silo, and then if you're looking from the developer to the objective, they don't know why they're coding stuff. And if they do understand that, because it's all connected, that really helps out. So from an OKR perspective, I look at how much is completed to achieve the objective, and you can connect all that up through your value stream. I can look at how many defects are in the way from that objective being completed. And as an executive in a company, I have this visibility to see things that I couldn't see before that will allow me to pivot if I need to against those objectives. And OKRs are really interesting. They go across your whole company. That's the same with value stream. You have to do capacity planning, all this stuff to achieve that objective, and having that be able to roll up is really cool. So my view on objectives, on metrics, is the right metric measure the right thing for the business outcome that you want. So at Connect All, I have a set of metrics that I look at, and some of those are flow, some of those are business objectives, and the things I want to accomplish. So if my goal is to improve quality, then I want to capture quality metrics as well, not just the lean metrics, right? I don't think there's a one size fits all to say these metrics are the ones that are going to improve your life.
The one metric to rule them all. Right?
Yeah, not one, no.
Yeah. All right, great. Okay, let's see. Next question. How do you see AI helping with this?
Oh, AI, that's an interesting question, right? So I struggle with that as well. So I see, AI working with feedback loops and with value stream in an interesting way. So feedback loops, we talk about human feedback loops, right? So we're talking, you ask me a question, I'm giving you feedback to your question. That's kind of a feedback loop. But in automated way, I see where AI can start making decisions like, what is the risk of moving that code to production for the human, right? I see so I'll have AI looking at that. It looks at all the changes that happened, all the different things that are going on, and it can make a decision on risk. It can make a decision on whether to move forward. Okay, here's a defect. the AI can say, oh, that's not that big of a deal, mark it, but move forward. I see that happening there. More in the automation of it and making decisions, right? And gathering feedback. At the deciding what to do at a company level, I don't see much there. I also see AI doing some predictive analytics. There's companies like Anadot and so on that can look at all your software defects and things that are going on and make some predictions for you. So I kind of see AI playing in that way of automating the flow of work in your value stream. Not doing the work, just how things,
right.
Yeah.
Being helpers rather than doers.
Making these more easy decisions on things and not impeding flow, but being able to keep flow going.
Right, okay, all right. I am just so excited about these questions that have come in, and but I do want to remind the audience that there is still plenty of time for questions. If you do have one, just go ahead and use your GoToWebinar control panel and submit it. Next question, could you give a concrete example from tester to coder feedback, e.g. using a bug tracking feature tracking tool like Jira? A tester creates a card saying a test failed. The card has to link back to a story. Something needs to detect that new card and know the link. Could you explain a bit more detail how this works?
So yeah, I think I get the question. So we could say Sonar Cube runs a test and it gets a defect.
Right.
So what we've done for that feedback is you automatically send that into Jira. It's in the Jira as a ticket, it's on your backlog, they see it there, it's got all the relevant information that you need to correct that change and resubmit your code. So that feedback is automated as you're going through. So I take my code, I change it, it goes through, gets the test, and then it goes back. Now, what's interesting about that question is back some time ago, when Waterfall and all of these things happen sequentially, the feedback loops weren't as, I mean, they've always been important, but not as important today, right? We are releasing code in every 2 weeks, and we're on shorter cycles. So that feedback has to happen like this, not wait 2 or 3 days. So you have to go look for that. I did a value stream management session with a company one time, and they waited 30 to 40 days just to get the code to be tested and back to them. And what would happen is they then would keep programming at a rapid pace against whatever defects that were being uncovered. So that didn't work out as well. So a couple ways to do that. I think pair programming with a tester and a developer is cool. Having the tester and developer writing their use cases along the way, that kind of amplifies the feedback right there at real time. But at the end part of the testing, when you're bringing stuff back, it's as simple as having that feedback end up into the developer's backlog queue, and they see it come in. We did a Slack integration for something like that one time too.
All right, great. Next question, good overview. What about percent, let's see, percent complete and acceptance between processes?
So that's the interesting part about connecting these things, right? Because they are connected, I can go in and see how much something is completed. So if I put a request in and it's flowing through, I now know that it's been broken down, and I can now see what pieces of what's been broken down is completed. So no matter what tool that is, I can see how much of that is done. Now you have some tools that natively do this, and I can look at my Epic story. It can tell me how many of the features have been delivered. All that kind of rolls up because the value stream's connected and you're managing the loops. So it gives you that incredible visibility through it. And that's the truth about the OKR thing we talked about. So whatever the portfolio decision tool you have, this connection really allows you to manage your business outcomes and know how far along you're getting. It really solves some of the connection in the value stream management space. And that's why I've said we need to map the whole value stream and understand this, not just plan, build, run, deploy. We've got to look at that information flow so that you do get that transparency, where traceability is just a report or a dashboard view, or you go look at that epic that says this. And I've implemented this at a couple companies I've worked in the past where we talked about this to intent. And then really in today's time, I think it's really relevant to know how far along you're getting with your initiatives, your epics, your features, and so on.
All right, great. Let's see, next question here. You mentioned a value stream leader. Can you talk more about that, and who would that be?
So value stream leaders are interesting, right? And they have them in manufacturing, and the value stream leader is responsible for managing the governance model, which I showed here. They're managing the flow of work, looking at that. Their full, role is how to improve delivery, how to improve flow. And that's the same here. So, a value stream leader should be somebody like a director of IT, but if somebody has to have enough experience and enough knowledge to have full visibility of your whole value stream. It can't be just one area leader that's taking care of one piece of it, because they are a system, they're all interconnected. And if you want to remove waste, then you have to be able to look at, okay, this is on this person's team, here's what's going on. Most of our stuff is caught up in the COBOL team because they're following a different flow. Some of the metrics we looked at, really, it's kind of interesting. We have these metrics that we have at Connectal. One of the new ones we just started, and it's really got great impact. We call it value stream optimization. It can tell and see where most of the work is getting broken down to and what team most of that work is going to. So you can see that if most of the work is going to this team, that's a bottleneck. That's going to be an issue. So now I can remediate that. So some of those metrics and things let you see across functional teams, and your value stream leader should know that. And you should also know the things that we talked about today. I guess he doesn't need to totally understand that first confusing part I talked about, but understanding how these things work together is relevant.
Doesn't need to know about the washing machine and all that good stuff. All right, great. Next question, does Connectal offer integration between Servicenow and GitLab?
Yes.
Boy, that was the simplest answer I think you've gotten so far. All right, next one, how do we implement value streams in existing Waterfall or Agile projects? How should one plan a day 0, day 1, day 2 outcomes?
And that's an interesting question. How do I implement value streams in Waterfall and Agile projects? First, value stream doesn't care whether you're Waterfall, whether you're Agile, whether you're following RUP, that old system, rational, whatever, it doesn't care. Value stream is about looking at all of that together. So if you have an organization and you want to implement a value stream, Agile is just a piece of the whole system that you're doing. It's a methodology in the system. So what I recommend if you want to get started with value stream management, it starts with mapping out the process and taking a look at, okay, so how do I get requests in the door? Okay, so those come from this team. So manage your whole work intake process. Take a look at all of that. Look at how does that get prioritized and pushed through. And it can enhance your initiatives as well. So it's really just looking at how you're doing things from a value stream perspective and mapping it out, doing a system map, and looking at how you can remove waste, how I can improve that. You may do a value stream exercise and you have a waterfall team. You say, this is probably best to be a Kanban team, right? I've done that before as well, where, okay, they're doing this in this way, but this should be a more reactionary Kanban team. This team needs to be more agile and longer cycles and things like that. So it's more of an overarching concept to all of those things, including DevOps as well, because you're looking at the whole system together. So hopefully that answered your question.
All right. Okay, next question here. And it looks like we have maybe 5 more questions after this, but as I said, there's still time, not to inundate Lance, but there's time if you do have a question. Next question. Yeah, don't keel over before the end of the webinar, please. Okay. What tools can be used for automating feedback with Jenkins?
What tools can be used for automating feedback to Jenkins? Well, ConnectAll does that, right? We can take feedback, of course, but so there's other tools as well that do that. I think Jenkins has some of their own tools that are built in. I believe that's through, I forgot the name of it, but somebody we worked with in the past that has different tools to do that as well. So there's a whole myriad of different ways to do it too, because you have to look at that feedback. And since you brought this up, I'll tell you a story. And it's about Jenkins and build fails. So my wife is a business analyst, and she works at a local software company and makes software for banks in my area. And there's 3 or 4 of them, so you won't be able to guess. She came home one day and she goes to me, I said, what do you do all day? She goes, I copy all of the logs from Jenkins and any errors, and I put them into Jira every day. And I'm like, it seemed like a waste of time. You should be able to automate that. So it was interesting when she started unfolding that story to me. And so, yeah, automating that stuff is really important. And I have other great DevOps, business analyst, wife stories that are kind of cool too.
Excellent. Excellent. I'm sure she loves that too. So, all right, next question. Do you envision a value stream leader digging into reports in version 1 and Servicenow and Sonar Cube and Jira to get metrics and manage a value stream? It seems unrealistic for one person to do that.
So yes and no. I kind of envision having a set of metrics the value stream leader may look at, but the goal of the value stream leader is to not so much look at those metrics, but to really understand how the flow of work is happening and craft that. Metrics are trailing activity, and you want to have metrics to manage things where analysis and understanding and improving flow, you may want some metrics, but that is a front more planning activity. The worst thing we could do, and I've said this before because of my background, the worst thing was we would take a value stream leader and turn them into what I call the manufacturer an expediter, right? And they run around moving parts around the shop floor so they can move things forward. By focusing so much on the metrics, that's what that role will turn into, and that's not what you want. So they should have some key metrics. We have dashboards and stuff that connect these tools and give those metrics, but you really want to get into the human factor of it. Talk to the teams. There's a term for it in Lean, which is going to the workplace, understanding what's going on, and then making recommendations to improve flow by looking at feedback loops, looking at how time things are going, and that kind of thing. Not so much plowing into metrics to make decisions.
All right, great. So we are about 18 minutes, 17 minutes to the top of the hour. So make that 16 minutes. So we'll kind of, I'm sure we'll be able to get through the rest of these questions. Here's one. How about a human testing finding something not SAST, S-A-S-T? I'm not entirely sure what this question means, but hopefully you do.
A human test.
How about a human testing finding something not SAST?
So that would be just a standard feedback loop. So SaaS or on-prem. So if I'm testing and I find something, I'm going to register that in the system that I'm testing against. And we want to get that feedback from that defect to wherever the developer is to react upon it quickly, if that's the goal. And I've seen some organizations where the humans, I hate saying that, but humans go through the whole process and then they give all the tests back in a batch and they get repaired and then we start all over. So it depends on what your goal is. Really, it does. I mean, value stream management, value stream optimization depends on what your goal. If your goal is higher quality, then maybe you want to be more rigid about that process and implement a restrictive type of feedback loop, right? I've been in companies where the developers, I've consulted with it, the developers are doing really great, getting a lot of stuff out, right? Getting, every week producing code. And then on the other side, the quality teams are saying, look, we're doing great. We're uncovering all of these defects. It's cool. And I said to the head of engineering, so yeah, they're doing a good job. Why are your developers creating such awful code? Right? So it depends. And so the goal in that value stream wouldn't be to improve how they're doing quality, but maybe shift left, produce better code so it goes through quicker. That's what the value stream leader has to do. So I think that answered that question, but it doesn't matter whether it's whether it's onsite or SaaS. I think the same kind of mindset, this critical thinking mindset I'm demonstrating here is what you have to improve the way you're producing software.
All right, great. Next question here. What impact does multi-vendor / partners with their own value streams have on managing the composite value stream?
That's an interesting question. What impact does a multi-vendor composite? Well, it can have great impact, I think, because you don't have enough control over those value streams. I think I call that the supplier pattern. So there's a lot of that going on today where I have my value stream, what I'm delivering, but dependencies are there against those value streams. So you can map those dependencies and you can try to improve those dependencies. We've integrated tools across that in that pattern, but it's difficult to impact a supplier's value stream in certain ways. So you have to just acknowledge that, and through connectivity and understanding, you can manage your cycle times better and understand your blockers and your dependencies.
All right, great. I think we have about 4 more questions here. How can we capture the cost metrics from value stream management to understand which processes in the flow or which process in the flow is draining the budgets?
Well, that's a good one, right?
Yeah, right.
I haven't talked about cost metrics. Well, that's a challenge a little bit with Agile and teams and costs. So, and how you're developing, right? And understand what teams are costing more and taking more budget. And so there's different metrics that we have that kind of show this against that, right? And the best way to do that is just to average out the cost of the teams against whatever your budget is, right? So I'm not one for saying everybody should track hours. That never makes sense, but looking at the cost of the individual teams as a whole, using the average of that, then I can say, this team is producing less as well, but producing higher quality. So there's no exact metric. It requires analysis to really get in and understand that, because team A could be faster than team B, but team A could be making more defects, costing a lot of rework and maybe more trouble. So they might initially feel like they cost less, but they really don't because of the work effort, right? So you got to go look at, what teams are taking up most of the budget and resources, and then figure that out. We do allow you to capture that information. We can show you the cost structure, from ConnectAll's perspective, but to really dig in and make a value stream decision on that, you have to understand all the connectiveness of the system.
Right. All right. Okay, next question. Here's a good one. How does Lance get his dog to behave so well during his presentation?
I gave him a biscuit before we started.
All right, back to regular questions. When creating a value stream, who should attend the mapping event?
So the mapping event, I believe, should have kind of this approach to it. So you want to talk to everybody through the value stream, but all at once, maybe at the end. So you want to talk to the people who are doing portfolio, get their untethered opinion of up and down, right? Or sideways of it. Then you want to talk to your developing teams. You want to talk to your testers. Then you bring them back together at the end of that exercise. Now, ConnectAll, we do that in a day-long kind of We have virtual sessions, but we also do day-long sessions where we'll come in and we'll walk you through that. And at the end, we give you a report with findings, impacts, some recommendations. But it's really making sure that you get enough of the whole production team and talk to them individually and then bring them back together and look at it. And when you start an exercise like that with those teams, tools aren't as irrelevant as how they perceive the flow of what they're doing. The tool is an enabler, right? Connect All enables the automation. So if you don't have a person or a process yet, you've got to uncover that that's not there and then figure out one that you can put in to improve. So my point is there, it's kind of like a flow of people when I've done these before, and then we all come back together at the end. So when you're doing that exercise, so I would have a meeting with the business unit on top, right? Have a meeting with the CIO of that team and what he's concerned about, mostly budget, right? Because he's got to get a bunch of stuff done. So what's important to him and how we make all this work together at each point of the value stream, and then bring it together and show everybody how their flow is.
All right. Okay, I think we have time for 2 more questions, then we'll go ahead and close it out. I understand the theory, but can you suggest any real tools for DevOps feedback?
Well, I don't like to make it about my company, but yeah, how about Connect All?
How about Connect All? Why not?
So yeah, so there's I'll quickly answer that. So Connect All, we can map and automate feedback loops if you want to, but a lot of times feedback loops aren't amplified or automated, and they're human-based, and you just need to understand them. And there's no real tool that can go out and say, oh, look at all this feedback, I need to do something about it. That takes a human. And then you get tools like Connect All to help you either amplify or help you orchestrate things happening based upon feedback and so on.
All right.
And
Great.
there's some other great companies out there as well. I don't want to have a total company plug, but there's some other great companies out there that do it as well.
Excellent, excellent. Okay, well let's go ahead and do this last question, then we'll wrap it up. Value stream mapping seems more like a business or executive team process. How, as an engineer, can I benefit from this?
So value stream mapping will help you reduce, hopefully, some of the workload, some of the different things. You'll understand how business work comes into you. So as a software developer, having visibility to the priority of stuff helps you write better code. Making sure that the code that may come back to you or the things that you're working on come back to you, it's going to help make sure that it was tested properly. All those different things, so you can map that all out. The connection from, so we also do things like connecting code to user stories up. So as a developer, I can see all the things that might have been connected to what I did. And maybe this isn't as important to an engineer, but traceability becomes a report. Audits become a report. We have a report for that. So hopefully I answered that question, but just an understanding of how work flows through your organization and how your work effort brings value to the organization and how your work effort brings value to your customer.
Excellent, excellent. Well, we are about 6 minutes to the top of the hour, and that was a marathon Q&A. So Lance, kudos to you for plowing right through that. I'm really, really impressed at your perseverance there. And I am equally impressed with the quality of the questions that came through. So thank you to everybody who did submit questions. We did not have any left over, so but if you have any last minute questions you want to send over to Lance before we close things out, please know he is getting a copy of all of the questions that came in, even the ones that were answered. So if we don't get to your question, or if we didn't get to it, or you still want to get something answered, please, he will be able to follow up with you, or somebody from his organization will be able to follow up with you. I also want to remind the audience that today's event has been recorded. So if you missed any or all of the event, you will have the opportunity to access it on demand. We are going to be sending an email after today's webinar that contains a link to access the webinar on demand. And the webinar is also going to be living on the DevOps.com website. So you can always go find it there. Just go to DevOps.com/webinars, look in the on-demand section, and it should be right there waiting for you. Okay, last few minutes, I mentioned that we were going to be doing a drawing for 4 $25 Amazon gift cards. So without further ado, let's go ahead and get to that. Our winners today are Colin P. Congratulations, Colin. Our second winner today is Elaine W. Congratulations, Elaine. Our third winner is Karen H. Congratulations, Karen. And our final winner today is Sharon O. Congratulations, Sharon. We'll be following up with all 4 of you offline via email to get your gift card over to you. So please check your inbox. If you don't see it there, please check your spam folder, because you know how Amazon gift cards can be sometimes. Lance, thanks so much for your time, for your expertise, for your presentation. Good stuff all the way around. We really, really do appreciate it.
Thank you.
Awesome, awesome. Also want to thank the audience for joining me today. This is Charlene O'Hanlon, and I am signing off. Have a great day, everybody. Please stay safe.